Well, New Zealand mass shooter Brenton Tarrant said in his manifesto that his goal, explicitly said this, was to get the U.S. government to crack down on the rights of American citizens. He believed that if the U.S. government overreached, he, by committing mass murder, could divide and destroy American society. What's amazing is that many people here seem inclined to do exactly that. The Christchurch shooting has sparked renewed demands to curtail gun rights and suppress freedom of speech. Of course, the gun in your closet and your personal opinions are not a threat to anybody except would-be authoritarians, and that's why they want to take them away from you. Author and columnist Mark Steyn joins us tonight. Mark, do you find it a little bit striking that this guy, this monster, wrote plainly in his manifesto that the point of this was to get liberals in the United States to crack down on the First and Second Amendments, and they're doing it?
Yes, it's weird. He actually put down in paper what is the reaction of liberals in the United States and around the Western world. Now, you don't have to be a genius to do that, because this has become something of a reflex reaction to a particular kind of atrocity. I mentioned earlier today that, for example, 49 people died in a gay nightclub at the hands of a Muslim of Afghan descent. And the way it goes with that is that all jihad is local. It's almost a parody now. The police profess themselves to be baffled by the motive. We've just had another one today, a relatively minor one. 3 people die in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And that is just supposed to be what the mayor of London calls part and parcel of life in a big city. But when we have an attack like this, where someone attacks a mosque, that's not part and parcel of life in a big city, and the only prudent reaction to that is that all of us should surrender our individual liberties, whether that's the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. And I think that actually tells you something about the world they're building for us. They're actually very eager to constrain core liberties, whether in terms of personal ownership of firearms or in something like free speech.
It's not reassuring. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of Americans, and I'm definitely one of them, who are so horrified by these mass shootings that they want to do something. But when the people in this country leading the call for gun control are so clearly dishonest and disingenuous, when their demand that you disarm has nothing to do with keeping you safe, you'd be kind of foolish to take them at face value and disarm, wouldn't you?
Yes, I think you would. And I find it actually rather interesting that in New Zealand, for example, where the Prime Minister did say our gun laws have to change, New Zealand isn't America, but about 20% of households in the country own guns, which is about twice the rate of Australia and actually rather higher than France, Germany, most European countries. It has a kind of sane and rather old-fashioned attitude to gun ownership. The people own guns, and the policemen, like the English policemen in the mother country, are for the most part unarmed. The idea that this should change because of one freakish outrage, the idea, and that's accompanied by saying not only can you not have weapons, but you can't actually debate and argue anymore. In other words, the reaction to more violence is to have less speech, which will inevitably mean more violence. This is now becoming the reflex reaction to these atrocities, to a particular kind of atrocity. Not like the guy in the Netherlands.
I wonder why. I mean, in New Zealand, and I understand the country's traumatized, and I feel for the country, it goes without saying, but punishing people for saying something you disagree with, sending them to prison, leaving them there with no bail, you would think somebody in the United States on the civil libertarian left would say something about that, but they appear to be applauding it. What does that tell you?
Well, I think they're applauding it because I think in a strange way it goes back to what you and Lisa were talking about earlier. I think identity politics presupposes an ever more powerful state to mediate relations between all these different identity groups. And that's actually one of the things we should be allowed to talk about. As we saw, I mean, it is actually hilarious. You laughed at the Chelsea Clinton clip. It is fantastic that Chelsea Clinton is being blamed for a mass murder in New Zealand for issuing what, even by Chelsea standards, was one of the blandest and most insipid and anodyne statements. It tells you how serious the anti-free speech left is now about steamrolling anyone who gets in their path.
If Chelsea Clinton is offensive, you and I are in trouble, Mark.
No,
but it's great to see you.
Long gone.
It's great to hear you while we're still allowed to talk. Thanks for coming on.